But we know that if we take tomatoes and olive oil and salt and pepper and garlic or onions, whatever, we're taking real ingredients and we're making a nice tomato sauce. We don't know what's in Prego.
Gentlemen, how you doing? Thanks. I'm honored to be on stage tonight with two of my favorite cooks and writers. And I want to tell you what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about their new books, about their approaches to cooking, and about themselves and each other. My job is to prod them along during that process with some questions, to moderate your questions, which I'll take at the end of the program. So, Mario, you've taken as your theme the idea of connecting farmers to chefs, introducing readers to recipes that don't just celebrate local food, but local farmers. Your book is America Farm to Table, but in reading it, I think its DNA is a little more European. I mean, it suggests in many ways the tenets of the slow food movement started by Carlo Petrini. Mark, for your part, you've written a cookbook that takes what on first blush appears to be a kind of opposite view, how to cook everything fast. The recipes are plentiful, they're awesome as always, but they're built differently. The book is as much a guide to time management as it is a traditional cookbook. So, fast versus slow.
He's trying to build a fight. He's going to have a struggle.
He's going to have a really hard time of it.
Fair enough. It's hardly a debate, but I wonder if we couldn't start with each of you telling us something about the thinking behind the books and how they represent a celebration on the part of Mario's book, the slow, and on Mark's part, the fast. So, Mario, take it away.
In conversation with a lot of the people that I meet around, traveling around America, and the world for that matter, people are always trying to make more delicious food. And in the past 10 years, as technology has raced forward and everyone has really embraced what they call molecular gastronomy, which is always perplexing to me because as far as I know, everything has molecules in it. But the focus so far for a lot of people is buying the right equipment. What kind of knife should I buy? What kind of sauté pan should I have? How can I clean them? Do I need a whetstone? Do I need a Cornu stove? Do I need an immersion circulator? And what really the best way to make what I would consider restaurant-level food is to buy the restaurant-level ingredients, which often include the same grocery stores, but not always. And if you could find the things that we buy that makes our food taste better, then you stand a better chance of having more delicious food. And if you buy it from a farmer whose name you know, then everything else is even better. So as a community-building strategy, as a lesson in deliciousness, and as a kind of good activity to have anyway, going to a farmer's market as opposed to rushing through a big box grocery store, the win-win-win was this style of cooking, which is how I cook at home. Most of the books I've written before, all of them, are kind of about restaurant food or kind of about Italian traditional food. This is how I imagine, even though I'm a pretty good Italian cook.
Some say.
Some say. This is how I really cook at home, which is to say I kind of buy an interesting protein and a couple of vegetables, and I cook them in a way that I can have it all ready kind of quickly, but timing isn't necessarily the only thing that matters to me. It's just really about how I can make it all come together at the same time.
That sounds familiar. Mark, you want to take a crack at the same question?
Yeah, I was trying to find a way to say you've got to be kidding, but of course, there's very little difference between Mario and I and our philosophy between Mario and me and our philosophy of cooking, but in How to Cook and I could see doing a book called How to Cook Everything Slowly, but How to Cook Everything Fast.
Big sales.
How to Cook Everything Fast is really an attempt to erase the excuses that people have for not cooking, or to sort of try to counter the excuses that people have for not cooking. So I really tried to reimagine the recipe and to create a series of recipes that are so seamless that even someone who doesn't know how to cook could go in the kitchen with the right ingredients, of course, open the book, and proceed to cook something that not only worked, but is delicious and takes 45 or 30, or in some cases even less time. So there are a lot of these recipes, and I think they're pretty good, but the spirit is the same, I think, which is that you need decent ingredients and you need to take care. And especially, I think, fast doesn't mean frantic. In this case, fast means efficient, and fast means having a plan, and fast means, as I said, moving seamlessly through the recipe.
So we're kind of on the same page here, which is really kind of a drag.
Yeah. Well, we don't like each other personally. You couldn't
Yeah,
get into that.
yeah, we could get into the personal attacks we were dealing with backstage between these two gentlemen, but I don't think it's really civil to do that on a Sunday night. So I'll try and gin up some culinary controversy by turning to your respective recipes for that great American Sunday night dinner, the roast chicken. Now, Mario, you brine.
I brine proudly.
And Mark, you don't brine.
I used to brine, but I think it's a waste of time. So there you go.
So there we have it. Mario, will you defend your brining?
Brining doesn't take very much time. You can brine for just a few minutes. You could actually brine fast if you want. No, what brining does is it creates the salinity in the solution that is absorbed by the bird and allows it to stay a little juicier and cook a little bit more evenly, in my opinion, and makes it more delicious. But I understand why people don't brine. They're in a hurry.
Yeah, they're busy people. They want to get the bird in and out.
That's right.
Bittmans, we call them.
Picky little Bittman.
When I was a kid, I grew up eating kosher chicken. My grandmother cooked kosher chicken, and I would beg my mother to cook chicken like my grandmother, and she wouldn't do it or couldn't do it. And it's all about salt, right?
Right.
It's like salty things taste really good. So it's funny, I was cooking these, forgive me, pork chops the other night, and
You're forgiven.
the first thing I thought of was, well, I have some time, so I'm gonna salt them and walk away. And clearly with meat, it is good to salt stuff first, which is a part of the koshering process, oddly enough. So I'm not anti-brine. I mean, I could say that in How to Cook Everything Fast, we have, when appropriate, we have a little section that's called If You Have More Time. So there's a way of making fast recipes slower and making them better, because I think you'd both agree that cooking is all about compromising. But present company excluded, you never have the perfect ingredients. I'm speaking for myself. I never have the perfect ingredients. I never have the skills I'd like to have. I'd never have the time I'd like to have. It's always like, what can I do in the X minutes I have with the stuff I have that'll get a decent dinner on the table by 7, 8, whatever it is. And if you have more time, you can do more stuff, obviously. If you have less time, you can't do quite as much. And I think a lot of cooking is about those kind of compromises, how you get the best meal possible out of that combination of your skill, your ingredients, and your time.
Let's stick with ingredients for a minute, Mark. You write a lot in the book about real ingredients, and I was struck by this because it comes up again and again throughout. Not ingredients, but real ingredients, and the importance of cooking with real ingredients. What, if you were explaining this to a Martian, what is a real ingredient?
I mean, I think I think what Mario's talking about, when you do farm to table, you're looking for the ideal ingredient, because you're looking for things that have been grown, as Mario just said, by someone whose name you know, or by someone who's down the road, or by someone whose farm you just saw, or whatever. But that's obviously not always an option for everybody. And supermarkets have decent ingredients. It's just that 80% of them are not decent. So what's the difference between the 20% of supermarket ingredients that are, let's say, real? Because every word has been co-opted. Natural's been co-opted, sustainable's been co-opted. Well, but real has not quite been co-opted. So what distinguishes the 80% of hyper-processed, fake, and sometimes poisonous ingredients from real ingredients? And the fact is that real ingredients come in their own package. They don't have any ingredients because they are ingredients. And cooking is the act of combining those ingredients to make dinner or whatever, to make meals. So it's whether wishbone is a real ingredient versus making a vinaigrette might be an argument, or whether Prego is an ingredient versus making a pasta sauce might be an argument. But we know that if we take tomatoes and olive oil and salt and pepper and garlic or onions, whatever, we're taking real ingredients and we're making a nice tomato sauce. We don't know what's in Prego. I mean, we know what's on the ingredient list, but it's stuff other than what I just said.
So, Mario, how does that real ingredient understanding square with the message of America Farm to Table? For vast swaths of the country, the farmers market is present once a week. The regular market may not be all that great. I've spent my money on this sumptuous book, these beautiful stories about farmers and restaurants all over the country. And I think to myself, gosh, I want to make that food. I don't know my farmer's name.
Well, first of all, you go meet them. I mean, you can go on the USDA website and put your zip code in. They'll put you to the closest farmers market and the days that they're open. So it takes a little bit of effort to be better, but it certainly can upgrade quickly the taste of your food and the simplicity with which you prepare it. And it gives you that kind of smug confidence that you're doing the right thing.
Right.
When you look at your poor friends shopping at the Piggly Wiggly in the processed food department. And that makes you, as I say often, when I get up in the morning, you have a choice. Can you choose joy? You do. And if you're wired that way, you choose joy. In the same way, when you go to the store or decide how you're going to shop for your food, you can choose good, or like Mark says, you may not be able to have that choice that day. But when you can do it, you should do it. And that's just the natural way of going.
So I'll take another run at the question. What do you think, Mario, is the single biggest impediment to people cooking better at home?
That they don't. The problem I would say with most home cooking is people look at the recipe book and then go shopping, as opposed to go shopping first and then figure out from the recipe.
Here, here.
Mark, do you agree?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with that statement. I would say the question is the biggest single problem, the biggest single impediment to people cooking at home is fear and ignorance, which is two, but whatever. I mean, people who cook at home may make mistakes, they may do some things better than others. That applies to all of us. The real problem now is that so many people don't. And
right.
The impediment is, I don't have time, I'm afraid to do it, I don't know how, it's too intimidating.
Will it taste good?
I might screw up.
Right.
And none of that stuff is really a problem once you start, but the fear and the ignorance is a problem.
I would have thought time would be a big issue, particularly in large urban settings like this one, where we find ourselves in the midst of time famine always, and the need to get that dinner on the table at 8 when we leave work at 7:15 is seemingly impossible to surmount. The New York Times, where I'm running this cooking site, for years had a 60-minute gourmet, and then it was a 30-minute gourmet. And now we get complaints if it's a 45-minute recipe. People want a 20-minute recipe, a 15-minute recipe, which certainly you can do, but not always. We know your view on time. It's in the title of the book. Mario, what do you say to those whose fear, whose ignorance comes about as a result of time famine?
If you shop properly, and as opposed to buying a whole chicken, you buy chicken thighs. And if you take the bones out or have the butcher do it for you, and you can take a pumpkin this big and cut it into 1/4 inch cubes. Any vegetable in the world, for that matter, can be cut into 1/2 inch cubes, put in a 450-degree oven, and be ready in 15 minutes. You just put a little olive oil on it. And that's the kind of coax. The coax is that even if you've never seen this ingredient, you know that if you cut it up into 1/4 inch cubes and toss it in the oven 15 minutes, it'll be ready. So just buy whatever it is. Buy the weirdest looking thing, not the thing you recognize. See this? Do you see how I made this? I put it in the oven 15 minutes. What do you think of that?
So that's pretty good. Take anything, cut into 1/4 inch cubes, soak in olive oil, little salt and pepper, and you're done.
This is what Julia Child once said to me. I don't understand. I can't do a Julia Child.
Come on, do the Julia Child.
Oh, Mark, try.
Please.
I don't understand what the fuss is about Italian food. They take things, they put olive oil on it, they put it in the oven, and they take it out again, and they eat it. And I said, yeah, that's really a good way to cook.
And they're so less tortured than the French.
Right. It's a living. Let's turn to those books for a minute. We all have children. The three of us have children. We love them dearly. Maybe recipes are similar to children, maybe not. But unlike children, we can have favorite recipes. And I'm interested to know your favorite recipe in your respective books. You've got a lot of them, so I'll let you think for a minute. Mario?
In this book?
Yes.
My favorite recipe? I would generally, at this point, open the book. Any page at all.
And point
say,
to it.
this is the one I love most.
That's why I demanded that no books be on this list.
I think I like the pork chops and sauerkraut, but that one takes probably the most time.
Excellent.
And when I go to restaurants, and when I cook at home, I mean, when I go to restaurants, I order the dishes that I know took the most time. Because there's no reason for me to go order steak au poivre at a restaurant, because I can make it better at my house. But if something took someone 6 hours, I want 2 of those. That's a good rule. Because that's what I didn't have.
Right.
I didn't have that time. But I would say in this one, I think that and the chicken and dumplings, I think are the ones that make me the most excited.
Beautiful.
Because I've never done recipes like those in my life.
And you will see them in the book when you purchase it after the event. Mark, how about you?
I keep coming back to this. There are many recipes. But I keep coming back to this funny reinvented chicken parmesan, which, forgive me, is it's beyond Italian American. It's got nothing to do with anything, but it's really great because it exemplifies a lot of the stuff or represents a lot of the stuff that I'm trying to do in the book. So I'm going to describe it for 1 second, if you'll indulge me.
Should I play some music?
Yeah, you can, but it takes almost as long to describe it as it does to make it. But so you turn on the oven, you put a broiling pan in the oven with olive oil in it. You turn on the broiler, sorry. You slice chicken breasts in half this way through their equators or whatever you call it. You take the broiling pan out, you put the chicken breasts on there. You slice some tomatoes, however way you want to actually. You take the chicken back out, by which time it's almost done, because we know that a chicken breast cut in half this way takes 3 minutes to broil, or 4. You put the tomatoes on, you put it back in, you grate some cheese, you toss it with some breadcrumbs, you take it back out of the oven, you put that stuff on top, you put it back in, you brown that, you're done.
So
it's like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
All right, I'm going off script here for a minute.
Oh, God.
Here at the 92nd Street Y, we tonight are beginning a brand new cooking competition. It's unlike any one you've ever seen on television. There is no food, actual food. There are no stoves. There is only the discussion of the dish. So we have heard this chicken parm. It takes 15 minutes. It sounded pretty good, don't you think? And now, joining us in the 92nd Street Y Challenge Kitchen Imaginarium, Mario Batali. Give us your
I
chicken
could do it in
parm.
less time than that. No, a quick recipe in this book would be...
Doesn't have to be quick. It can be fabulous.
Oh.
Did you say speed was of the essence?
No.
Well, there was some competition. I thought, if we're not competing, then can I win? Let's think.
We got your eggplant parm.
Well, that's delicious.
It is delicious.
Did you see the eggplant turrets?
There you go. Yes, indeed.
All right. So we took eggplant. We dredged them in mashed potato. What do they call those pieces? What do they call instant mashed potatoes?
The flakes.
Flakes. Buds. That's it.
Bud.
You dredge it in milk, and then you dredge it in the buds, and you saute it until it's crisp. It suddenly has a potato crust. It's the only thing I could figure out how to use
very cool.
instant potato buds. Then I took angel hair. I tossed it in the normal water. I took it out about 1.5 minutes short. I cooked it in a quick little marinara sauce that I made with the ingredients left over from the tomatoes that he sliced wrong. I tossed them all together. Then I take those 2 little eggplant discs. I put the spaghetti in between it. I put the other disc on top. I put it in the oven for about 4 or 5 minutes, and you get this crispy spaghetti eggplant turret that was so delicious.
Sounds pretty good, does it not? So at the very end At the very end, after everyone has left, Guy Fieri will tell us which one is the winner. Okay, so you're both towering figures in the world of American food. In the world of food, you provide us with these amazing recipes week after week, book after book, and you spend time talking to us about them on television, travel around the world. When do you cook, and to what purpose? How much is professional? How much is personal? And how does that change when you're, I'll call it off stage, when you are in Michigan, when you are in Massachusetts? I'm interested in the actual act of cooking and how it fills or doesn't fill or would fill your day. Time famine is an issue for both of you as well. You want to start, Mark?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. It's actually, I think I've gotten lazier and lazier, and I'm incapable of following recipes at this point. So the people who work with me and who test most of my recipes don't even, when I say I tested this recipe, they're like, yeah, that's fine, we're gonna test it anyway, because it's like, I'm useless when it comes to this. And now,
He's a cookbook author.
I'm a cookbook author.
I'll take all your returns and bring them right back to Barnes & Noble.
Now I think a lot of what I do is I pull stuff out of the refrigerator and I start cooking. And sometimes quite honestly, sometimes it's worth repeating and sometimes it's not worth repeating. But it's really relaxing and it's really fun. But there's a reality here of travel and pressure and busyness that makes it, and the fact that my kids are grown, that I don't cook every night anymore. And in a way I miss it, and in a way it's moving on.
Mario?
I cook breakfast every day for my son, or it used to be 2, now it's down to 1.
Not a sad story, he's off at college.
And then I make dinner on 2 of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
All
2
right.
of those nights I'll make dinner. And that's during the school season. And I'll make anything. Meatless Monday is generally at our house, and it's always a challenge for my kids, or my wife and kid, because they're not that much into the movement. So I always come up with something that makes it more fun for me, and it challenges us a little bit. And then one of the other nights I'll make something. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, the boys' babysitter, we still call her our babysitter, Leonora Maya, who we call Chef Leo around the house, makes delicious Mexican food at our house. Terrific. But in the summer, I cook every day. We make dinner, well, we don't go out very often in the summer. I mean, not because we don't like it or because there's not great restaurants, but it's just, we're sitting on our little lake front and I have a pizza oven and a grill, and it's very simple to just go to the store, buy something, marinate it in some salad dressing made by somebody else, then throw it on the grill and toss a little salad and put something else in the pizza oven to cook for a couple of minutes, and it makes it delicious. So I cook literally, I was in Michigan for 63 days in a row this summer, which is a world record for me, being anywhere for 63 days. And we cooked every single day.
That's great. Mario, Mario has a really great internet interview series on Medium called the Batali Inquisition. I endured it myself a few months ago. And one of the questions that I like most in the Inquisition is about your favorite time of day. And for me, it's just before dawn, when everything is possibility. And I was thinking about that in relation to the last question I asked, because I wonder what your favorite time of the day to cook is, and how that informs some of the cooking that you do for the books. Like you, Mario, I cook breakfast for the kids every day, and that has strangely become one of my favorite times of the day to cook. Mark, when you describe taking stuff out of the fridge and just getting going, I have the image of a dinner coming together. Do you have a favorite time of the day to cook?
I do like, I actually like cooking breakfast for myself, which can also be pulling stuff out of the refrigerator, and because I eat a lot of stir fries or other kind of odd things for breakfast. But I think dinner is, I I mean, as elaborate as I'm ever going to get, it's in the late afternoon, early evening.
I'm not even going to ask Mario the question because he has a pizza oven in the backyard. So any time is a great time to cook in the pizza oven in the backyard. Mario, there's a recipe in the cookbook for Spanish chicken with saffron and olives and onions that you recall as your favorite high school dish. It's an awesome recipe. Do you remember college at all? Do you have a favorite college dish?
Well, in college, no, I don't remember. No, in college, I cooked professionally. That was my first job. That was when I first started really working in a kitchen. So we made these strombolis at a place called Stuff Your Face in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Woo! Big Red.
But we cooked. We had 5 roommates. In our second year, we moved into a house, and everyone had to cook one night a week. And some people bought banquet chicken and just heated it up, and some people just cooked a lot. And we always had a good time. You could know for sure that if me and my buddy Jim Gandolfini were out for drinks on either a Friday or a Saturday, and one of our buddies named Pete Keene, who we still call Dr. Horizontal for his ability to stay horizontal most of the day, he would clean up no matter what kind of mess I made if I made pasta at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we did a lot of late night bar closing pasta dishes that I never had to clean up after.
Excellent. Mark, graduated Stuyvesant High School here. Ooh. Listen,
No one?
No one claps for Stuyvesant at the 92nd Street Y? Come on. What was your favorite dish in high school?
Well, high school, my friend Chuck Fitzgerald, who was Italian despite his last name, his mother made jars and jars of pasta sauce, red sauce, and would leave mozzarella in the refrigerator. And this is how I got portion size wrong for many, many years. We would...
The fridge was a single serving? Is that what it was?
Sort of like that.
We would indulge in a certain substance that's now rapidly becoming legal, and...
Conversation.
And Chuck would cook a pound of pasta and cut up a pound of mozzarella and put it in a bowl, put the pasta in there and the sauce on top. As I recall, he didn't heat the sauce up because that would slow down the consumption of the pasta, right? But the pasta was hot enough to toss with the mozz and the tomato sauce and melt the mozz, and we would eat a pound of pasta. So for years I thought a pound of
50
pasta
grams
served,
is the right size.
served 2 people. Yeah.
So in my professional life, I've been spending a lot of time lately talking about this new recipe database and cooking feature at the New York Times, which is available at nytcooking.com. And one of the riffs that I go on is about recipes as sheet music, notes that we can interpret in different ways for different results. And so the form of sheet music has been codified over the years. We have an introductory note, we have a list of ingredients, we have the instructions for preparing those ingredients. Mark, your book kind of disrupts this pattern a little bit. Not a great deal, but a little bit. And I wonder if you could talk about that.
The intention is to disrupt it more. I feel like there's a way in which the way we've all written recipes, myself included, for a long time, is misleading because it makes people believe that it's important to set the ingredients in place, do mise en place before you start cooking. So you have a cup of onion, you have a sliced tomato, you have chopped meat or vegetables or whatever, you have minced garlic, you have a herb that's already been picked, and you have a spice that's already been measured, and so on, and then you start cooking. But the fact is, by the time you prep all of those things as a home cook, you probably could have cooked the dish. So what I'm trying to do in Fast is to use that ingredient list as almost a shopping list, and then distinguish between preparation and cooking and make it so, as I said at the beginning, make it so that the recipe follows a sort of a seamless transition from prep to cooking to prep to cooking, and takes advantage of the fact that when you're applying heat to food, it takes some time for something to happen. And this is the way cooks who know how to cook, which is to say you walk in the kitchen, you put a pot of water on the stove, you might turn on heat under a skillet. I mean, in every restaurant I've ever been in the world, most skillets are hot by the time you start cooking in them. You put some olive oil in the pan, then you chop the onion, you put it in the pan. While the onion's softening, you slice the tomatoes or you chop your chicken or whatever it is you're gonna do. Then you brown that and so on. You go back and forth between counter to stove and counter to oven or whatever. And that is, I know this is how you cook. I know it's how I cook, and in a way the recipes, or not in a way, the recipes are designed to say this is how it's really done. This is the, you call it sheet music, I call it a little bit of choreography. This is the kind of choreography of the kitchen. People move between one thing and another. They don't say, okay, what is everything I need to have for this dish? Which is what chefs have the luxury of doing because other people are doing it for them.
So let me jump in for a second. Mario, you have written, obviously, many, many recipes for home cooks like us. You also write or dictate or deliver recipes for line cooks, essentially, for your sous chefs to make. Can you talk a little bit, for the benefit of our crowd here, about how those recipes differ from one another, the instructions that you would give an employee, a gifted chef or a gifted line cook who you want to prepare food that is yours, versus how you would tell a home cook to do it in a recipe?
Well, like Mark is suggesting, there's a shorthand that we use in the restaurants. And in fact, the prep of either the marinade or the dry rub or whatever takes the meat or fish or protein or vegetable to a different state, we give that in like 5 parts this, 2 parts that, 1 part this.
Right.
It's never in measurements because it depends on how many they're going to make. And generally they're making, in a restaurant, you'll prep a batch of 40 is pretty much the standard. 40 quail, 40 steaks, 40 fish, whatever. And basically you give them that step, then you give them the contorno step, which is the side dish, and then you give them the sauce step. And the sauce step rarely involves very much cooking because in our restaurants most of the sauces are vinaigrettes or oil-based and they're just kind of drizzled around unless it's a braising liquid, in which case then it comes with the dish. And that's basically all you say.
Right.
You say, I want spaghetti squash, I want it roasted. I want a black truffle vinaigrette, but I want it wetter than normal and throw a little honey. And for the quail, I want to make sure that it's marinated in cheap balsamic vinegar, extra virgin olive oil, honey, and make sure there's thyme in there because I want the thyme to be representative of something that I'm going to taste when we put the polenta on the bottom of the plate. And they'll say, polenta? You didn't say polenta. I said, oh, I forgot to tell you about the polenta. Yeah, we got to have polenta that has fresh thyme in it when you cook it so that it's still soft.
Which sounds really cheery, but imagine if he really said that to you and you had to do 40 of those in like an hour. It would be scary.
Well, not as daunting. I mean,
No,
you know,
it would be scary.
All right, all right.
So Mario, in your book, you describe I say sheet music, you say choreography. Mario, you say an itinerary or a roadmap, and you suggest that these recipes are roadmaps that hopefully will lead you off the road into a sort of improvisatory territory. I'm not sure, but I think that's the first time you've really written that that baldly, and it's pretty exciting if nervous-making.
Well, the idea that
Nervous-making for the nervous
for the home cook. Yeah, I know, I understood. I would say that a lot of home cooks are very much cooked the way Mark and I cook at home, which is to say we get it started and we just kind of roll with it. We also consult recipes without really following them very carefully on an often basis because we want to know how to make something, but we really don't care how that chef really made it. We just want to make it our way. And the idea is that you use that same kind of let it go thing when you're cooking at home, but also when you're shopping. So you know that you really are thinking that you'd like to have some cauliflower tonight, but you get there and there either isn't cauliflower, or you see the cauliflower is not in the perfect shape. It wouldn't make a difference what you chose. You could choose Romanesco, you could choose a sweet potato. To treat it almost exactly the same way is fundamentally what I want you to understand. And it gets back to putting the stuff in the oven for 450 degrees for 15 minutes. Everything cooks. So once you're not afraid of messing it up by botching the ingredient or not being careful enough in your diligence of browning something, then you are freed and you are a Zen master at the top of your tea service. You are floating high above the clouds, playing Jimi Hendrix solos in your mind while you're cooking this stuff because it's so natural for your hands to do it because you've made the dish so many times.
Wow. All right, so there were pretty heady questions and definitely heady answers. So let's stop and play a short game, if you don't mind. I'd like to give you some names and words, one by one, a sort of word association game. I'll say a name, I'll say a word. I'll alternate between the two of you. I'll take a one-word answer. If you want to expand on it a little, that's okay, but we're not looking for lectures.
Making me very nervous.
Are you a little nervous?
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
They hate this game.
Okay. We love this game,
No,
Sam.
this game is good.
All right.
I'm going to start with you, Mario, because Mark's so nervous.
Right.
Craig Claiborne.
Style.
Alice Waters.
Mayonnaise. What can I say? You want to?
No, it's
you Want
okay.
you want
No.
me to expound? No, okay.
Tell me about your mother. Julia Child, Mario.
Classic.
Michelle Obama.
Wow.
That's what I think. I think, wow.
Well, we'll let that stand.
Mark went with wow.
Wow.
Bill de Blasio.
Confusing.
Mark, you ready?
I'm not sure. I don't like this. Go ahead. I'll do better.
Frozen peas.
Oh, frozen peas are awesome.
Tripe.
Delicious.
Slow cooker.
Well, I mean, it's a very useful item.
Microwave oven.
Still pending.
I like how they call it the science oven.
Yeah.
Mark, baking.
Challenging.
Mario, Pope Francis.
Rockstar.
Is that the current?
That's the current Pope.
Okay.
That's the current
I
Pope.
wouldn't have known
The
that.
one that lives in that, the one that lives in the church in Rome.
that house.
There you go, yeah. Exactly.
In the big house in
Yeah,
Rome.
exactly.
All right, nice work, boys. But my questions continue.
All right.
Now, we'll get off the one-word answer. Here's one from my daughter, who's 11. What's your favorite family meal to make and to eat? I think it's breakfast we heard there. Mark?
Oh, time of day question, not dish question? Absolutely dinner.
Beautiful. All right. If you weren't a cook, if you weren't a journalist or cookbook writer, if your life had taken an entirely different path, what do you think it would be cool to be? Mario?
My answer is pool boy in Malibu. But I'll explain that answer.
You better
I will.
explain it.
Because I always fancied the idea of being an oceanographer. But when I came face to face with organic chemistry in college, I found my limitations. And when I should have just memorized the book, I tried to understand it. And it's beyond me. So I would have suddenly realized my miserable success at not being an oceanographer and stuck around the water a bit.
Very cool.
So you want the fear answer or you want the ideal answer?
I think that if Mario's answer was pool boy in Malibu, we're looking for the awesome answer.
Czar.
Czar.
Yeah, czar. I want to be czar.
I applied for
Sorry,
a
I
czarship,
wanna be
but I never
czar.
got
I mean,
it.
I can't help it. Even czar of transportation would be nice,
Right.
but czar of something.
Mario, your book champions the work of more than a dozen great farmers across the country. These guys have extremely difficult jobs, and they do them in a landscape that is dominated still by industrial farmers. What do you reckon the role is of the small market farmer in America today?
The role is to continue whether they come from a 7th generation farm family or they're just people that got tired of living in the city and want to do something different with their world. Their job is to grow stuff by using all of the tools that we have in our natural greenhouse here and to make food and food products. And it's not only vegetables, there's chicken farmers and there's oyster farmers as well. Their job is to enjoy what they do, live the life that they imagined it could be, and they're doing the right thing. And I think in the world where big farming is considered a problem, which it has its problems, but it's not a problem, it's the middle-sized farmers that are going to have the trouble. They're going to get the squeeze. Small farmers can sell all of their product at a green market at a premium price to a consumer group who are waiting for you when you get there. So enjoy that, and that's where they're the rock stars. They can enjoy the kind of creativity and their freedom to do what kind of ever they want. and while providing an excellent service for people who are so inclined to use that service. So that's their job.
So those mid-sized farmers, of whom we've lost, I think, something like 100,000 in the last 5 years in this country, face big problems. So too, in their own way, do the industrial farms. Mark, in your work for the Times, you've been on some of these big industrial farms, as I recall. Is there a role for industrial farming in America today, or should we be looking toward a growth in the small market and in the middle market that has been hit hardest? Or are we stuck with agribusiness versus small market?
It's not a question that can be answered in 30 seconds or a minute, but
That's outrageous. We only have 30 seconds or a minute.
You guys have 2 hours. You really want to hear the answer?
yeah. I think that mid-sized farms are increasingly important, or that is, I think they're critically important. And I think that ideally we'd move to a more regional form of agriculture where, say, the United States or North America, we're 6 or 8 regions and we all got much or maybe even most of our food locally in the sense of a few hundred miles. And the way to do that is to have farms of 200 and 300 acres, which I think are medium-sized farms, growing 1 or 2 crops that are not corn or soybeans, which are a big problem. I think so-called industrial farming, which I don't know how we want to define it, can have a role, but it can't have a role if the entire state of Iowa is growing corn and soybeans and nothing else. That doesn't work. If Iowa consists of bigger farms that grow a variety of different things, I think that can be useful. But it's not so much the size, it's what they're growing and how they're growing it. We don't need probably the richest agricultural state in the country, or second richest to be growing only corn and soybeans. It's just ridiculous. Both of those products are used to make mostly junk food, and that's not what we need to be eating. Thanks.
What's on your Thanksgiving table, Mark?
I don't even know where I'm doing Thanksgiving yet. But there will be a turkey, I guess.
Excellent. Mario, you're from the Pacific Northwest. Will there be a salmon?
No, I'm a traditionalist, but what I do is I make kind of like the same 10 dishes every year, but I choose a theme when I'm bored at the end of the summer. And I'm thinking about what I'm going to cook. So this year we're doing a kind of a Santa Fe, New Mexico variation.
Excellent. I like to hear that. I asked the Thanksgiving question because I got a lot of Thanksgiving answers. You can come and see me later and buy my book. Can you tell us, Mario, about a cook we may not have heard of, a chef we may not have heard of, who we should know about?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows everybody. I mean, there's blogs about chefs that I think Jody Williams is a very interesting chef, and she's doing very cool food in the West Village at a place called Buvette, and she's about to open Via Carota, Carrot Street,
nice.
Which will be her Italian take on stuff. And the way she looks at food as kind of small plates and not really cooked so much is a fascinating way of reinventing the restaurant experience. So I think I have a good time there.
Mark, have you run into any we should be clocking?
Don't I ask you where I should go
You
to
do.
eat?
You do. But the reason I ask that question is because what's going on here is they're hiding their favorite restaurants from us. You both travel a fair amount. It's one of the great privileges of the line of work that we happen to be in. And this comes across in both the books, in the recipes chosen, in the chefs and restaurateurs who are profiled in your book, Mario. I'm interested to know, if not the chefs themselves, I understand you need to keep your private places private, but in American cities right now that are experiencing a growth in cool food. I can tell you as a former national editor of the Times that I had thought going into it that it was going to be a lot of, wing joints for me on the road, and this simply is not the case. So what American food cities are you excited about right now, or American cities that have good food scenes in them?
Well, I'm always excited by the Pacific Northwest because their ingredients caught up. I mean, the chefs are now capable of doing all the great things that they need to do with all those great things, but For me, my go-to place right now is the American Southeast. I love Charleston. I love New Orleans. I love any town. I was in Fairpoint, Alabama, last Tuesday, and I hadn't really thought ever about the Gulf Coast, really, that in Alabama. And there was this hotel that was built on in and around the grounds of a Civil War hospital, and it's right on the water. And I went to like a grocery store and ordered a shrimp po' boy, and it was, you could see the shrimp boat from the front step of the grocery store, and it was the most delicious thing. So I think I need to find more time to do a little trip in the Gulf Coast and the Southeast. I think that's where I'm headed.
Mark?
I think what's going on is that as our great cities become increasingly core again and gentrified and harder to live in because they're so expensive, and that goes for restaurateurs as well as people who live in them. Young chefs, even not so young chefs, are moving back to where they came from. So now everybody can travel everywhere. People do stages with, Mario's restaurants, they do stages at Noma, they go to Per Se, they go anywhere they want to go. They come back, they want to set up in New York or Manhattan or Brooklyn or San Francisco or Washington, and they find that it's way too expensive. So they go home to Indianapolis or to Pittsburgh or to Dallas or to Phoenix or wherever. And I think consequently what you find is that there's great food everywhere now. That, we have great ingredients everywhere. And now there are people who really know how to cook everywhere. And if you drive cross country, as I've done a couple times in the last few years, you find that you stop somewhere and you will find good food. In towns you never even heard of, you will find good food.
This is good news for America.
It is.
It is.
Now, I have a bunch of questions from you in the audience, but before we get to them, we also put the word out on social media in the last few days for some questions, and we got a lot of very, very good ones. I've selected only the very best for you here live at 92nd Street Y, and I'm going to send them out to you as they came in to me. Anybody can jump in on this. My CSA keeps sending cabbage, turnips, and radishes. What would you cook beside fish tacos and soup? The bidding again, cabbage, turnips, radishes.
Let's come up with some unexpected stuff. I don't know. I would, with turnips or radishes, I would slice them and salt them and eat them raw. I mean, there's nothing better than a raw turnip that's been salted. So maybe that's not that exciting, but people often don't think of eating stuff like that raw. Cabbages, I don't know, poach the leaves and serve them with butter. You don't get much simpler than that, and if it's a good cabbage, it's a really good thing to do.
Sounds good.
Both excellent ideas. I'd pickle the hell out of everything in that table right there.
All right.
Soak it overnight. Pour hot vinegar brine over it. Let it soak overnight. And cool down. Then put it in the fridge. Eat it the next morning for breakfast with hot sauce.
All right.
Because I'm a badass that way.
Yeah, I know. You just brought it strong. From another precinct, why does Venice not reimagine its food? Is the city just anti-modernist, or would having good food there be bad for the economy?
Venetian food is not bad. That's ridiculous.
I love Venice. I think Venice is delicious. Like any place where you can count on tourists who are only going to be there for 2 or 3 days, there's a lot of shit out there, too. Right. But, I mean, you could say that about New York. Right. You could say New York has unbelievably miserable restaurants if you decided to eat within 3 blocks of Times Square every day of your life.
Okay. So we'll be getting back to that correspondent.
To Venice.
Who does the dishes in your house?
I do them because as I'm cooking, I just don't like to pile it up. So I wash it while it's just being done. And then I try to not do them after dinner. But my wife has much more patience at looking at a dirty counter than I do. So eventually I'm just like, all right, I'm going to clean it.
This is the notion of keeping your station clean. The chefs are it's one of the great things. There may be many difficult things about living with a chef, but keeping the station clean is one of the great ones. Mark, what about you?
Changes all the time
Changes
for me.
all
I mean,
right.
I clean up, someone else cleans up, we both clean up.
It's like
Whatever
it's like a hippie paradise.
It is, exactly.
What are your biggest service pet peeves when you dine out?
I'm sure you have a list, Mark. Let's hear it.
Where do I begin?
I'm very impatient. I suppose my pet peeve is being ignored.
Mine is the opposite. I like my table to be less people around it all the time. As far as I'm concerned, there's a Soviet no-fly zone on the shoulders between me and my guests. And all right, my water glass is half empty. It is not great service to interrupt the table every 6 seconds to pour more water. So get the fuck away from my water bottle.
There we go. All right, this question comes from @Sam_Sifton on Twitter.
I met him. He's kind of a
cranky guy. Do you think the omnipresence of third and fourth screens in our lives is changing how we cook? What is this guy talk? I suppose this guy is talking about phones and tablet devices. Are they changing how we're cooking? What do you think, Mario?
Well, I think the New York Times is banking on that, aren't they, Sam? Isn't your bonus entirely based on that?
It's a self-serving answer.
Of course it is.
Yes.
It's making it easier to get more information. It's making you less perplexed. If you find a quick question, you can carry a recipe on the phone. You can shop with your phone in your hand with the list and check them off. You can talk to your phone will answer back to you. It changes the way we do everything.
Thank you for knocking that one out of the park. Mark?
I
That's
don't think so.
I
don't think so. You still have to get in the kitchen and cook. I mean, everything Mario said is true, obviously, but you have the information. You still have to get in front of the stove.
Beautiful. You can
He said
do
that
with your phone.
as if it's torturous.
Yeah.
You still get in front of the stove.
Yeah, well, that.
So we've been up here for some time. We're getting to know one another, although we know one another. And here's what I want you to do. Think about your book. What would you cook from your book for Mark? And Mark, what would you cook from your book for Mario?
Mark's a good eater.
Yeah.
And Mark, like me, likes a good story. So I would make my grandma's slow-cooked spare ribs into spaghetti sauce and serve it for him. And I could tell him all the funny little things my grandma did when we
Because there are bones in that
bones
pasta
in your
sauce.
spaghetti.
Oh,
What the hell's going on here?
that's a good
I know
story.
that dish.
And Mark, a member of the police.
Well, I would cook Mario pasta a la Norma for reasons that will stay between us, actually.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
There we go. I feel a little awkward right now.
Well, some things have to remain private, even when you're in a public place. What can I say?
He promises he'll wear the negligee I bought him
Oh,
for
boy,
Christmas.
yeah. I wanted to skate away as quickly as possible. What cookbook authors do you admire? Oh, I love the silence. Other than myself.
My favorite cookbook, I don't know the names of the authors of my favorite cookbook from the last couple of years, but it's called Japanese Farmhouse Cooking. And I use it. I just don't know who wrote it. But it's really good.
That's fantastic.
I look at Elizabeth David's books as the most inspirational kind of reading, but it's not necessarily a recipe book. So recipe books, I like Paula Wolfert, and I like Lynn Rosetta Kasper for her magnificent book on Emilia Romagna, which still, to me, I use all the time.
Those Elizabeth David books are terrific.
Spectacular.
They're a lot of fun.
They're really, really interesting and smart. All right, I'm going to ask one more question of each of you, and then we're going to go to the cards. Here's the question. What's the argument for cooking at home? Is there one? We live in this city that is filled with restaurants that offer takeout, sometimes very good takeout, sometimes very cheap takeout. The time famine I mentioned earlier weighs heavily upon us all. We gotta go, go, go. And all three of us make this argument that you should cook at home. But what's the argument for cooking at home?
The fastest version of the answer to that I know is that you want to know what you're putting in your body, and that's the only way to do it.
All right.
I mean, I could talk about it for half an hour,
I
but
know
that
you
is the
could.
one-sentence answer.
Well, I like it.
I would say that in a complicated day, when you have so many things going and so many things are still left open by the end of your day as open projects, you can go home and you can actually make something and consume it and be done with it and check it off your list and have done it well and feel satisfied.
I like it. And also, apparently, you can feel pretty high.
Yeah, exactly.
To the cards. I've always wanted to do questions off the cards. It makes me feel like we're doing late night television.
You could throw them.
I'm going to throw them in there. So this is a question about greens. How do you cook greens that aren't, and this next word is in all caps, nasty? And then to explain that, there's a parenthesis and it says bitter, stringy, etc.
You want to cook them fast or you want to cook them slow?
You can do whatever you want. You do need, I mean...
What's this person doing wrong?
Well, maybe...
I don't think they like greens.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you could cook spinach in 3 minutes and it's not bitter, stringy, or nasty, right? So, I mean, some greens, if you don't like kale, for example, you might want to cook it a little bit longer so that it's not stringy. But you can stir-fry kale in 3 minutes and it can be really great. So, it's a hard question. I don't know.
For broccoli rabe, what we've found in the world is that it's a two-step process. You blanch it in plenty of salted water, then you shock it until it's completely cold. You cook it all the way through. Then you heat up your pan with the extra virgin olive oil, the garlic, and the chili flakes, and maybe an anchovy. And you just toss it for a few minutes because you've already done the cooking, so it's already tender. Cut it up into little pieces, cook it like that, and it's really delicious. And the bitter, I don't know where it goes, but I kind of like bitter anyway, so I'm a good judge.
It's important if you follow that recipe to tell no one about the anchovy.
Right. You can't tell people you put an anchovy.
In fact, as a general rule, I think, never, ever reveal the anchovy. Because it's excellent, and it makes it better. But once you then you're in a whole conversation, and it's awful. All right, next question from the card. Why and when should we salt pasta water? Ditto putting olive oil into pasta water.
We'll leave this for Mario.
Yeah, this is all Mario.
I bring my pasta water to a boil and I put the salt in it right before I put the spaghetti in because then I always remember to do it. And I never put oil in my spaghetti water.
Good.
Nor should you.
Oh, can you expand on that?
Well, it's just wasting it. I mean, the idea that when you cook pasta, what you're creating is a porous thing that will hold on to the sauce. If you cover it with oil, already those little pores are starting to get full. The idea of a great pasta is that the condiment and the noodle come together as one.
Okay, this is like a whole, it was like psychiatry or something, like 5 cents up here. All right, this is another person with a big problem. Hi guys, I've done everything to make a perfect roast chicken. Brine, bring it to room temperature, pat it dry before roasting. When it comes out of the oven, it's crispy, but then the skin becomes floppy, and then there's a slash, and then there's a dirty word. So this is
must know this word.
It's poopy. It becomes a bad thing. So it starts out crispy and becomes floppy.
Flaccid.
Ooh. So what's going on here? Does this guy live in a sauna?
I don't know.
The opposite, I think.
What do you think?
Lives in the opposite of a sauna. No, but I mean, crisp things don't stay crisp forever. For the most part, they're crisp when
it's true
when
that
they come
some
out of the
time
oven.
may pass
Yeah,
between
if
these
it
two
happens
things.
in 5 seconds, something weird is going on.
Yeah.
Right?
For me, you roast a chicken in one way. You brine it if you can. If you can't, you put it in a 500-degree oven for 45 minutes. You take it out, and then you eat it as soon as you possibly can.
That's about
I like it.
right.
What's your favorite food memory?
My grandma used to make these raviolis with oxtail sauce, and the ravioli the filling was hidden from us for several years. When we discovered that it was actually calf's brain, Swiss chard, and sausage, we were suddenly the weirdest kids on the block.
Right.
But once kids ate them, because she always made enough, although you were only allowed to eat either 8 or 9, and I don't remember what number it was, but it's part of the lore of our family that you only got 8 or 9, but there was more around. If you would eat them with us out of the refrigerator, cold, any kid in the neighborhood, once they'd tried one of those, would help grandma out of the car every time she came.
But they did not know the filling.
No, but yes, they did. That was the joke.
Oh.
Here, try this ravioli. It's really good. You know, it's cat's brains, right? Oh, you guys are so weird.
Fantastic. Marcus?
You know, there's way too many, but a friend of mine baked bread yesterday, and he did a really incredible job, and I had some leftover brisket from the night before, and I put that on the bread with some mustard, and that is my current favorite food memory.
From yesterday?
From yesterday?
You know, I mean,
Mark
they
had a
just all
difficult
blend
childhood.
together. You
3
know?
days ago, there's an empty
Right, after that, there's nothing.
Every
I
day
can talk
a
about
new
my
day.
grandmother. I mean, it's so...
Every day a new day from Mark.
Right.
The second part of this question is, if you could eat anywhere tonight, and I'll add, and they can, where would you go? Where would you go if you could go anywhere in the city tonight?
Actually, this is not a lie. I would go to Otto.
Aww.
It's not
And I'd
a
go to
lie.
Mark's.
It's not a lie. But I'm not going to, because we're too far uptown.
Mario?
I'm going to Jean-Georges.
It's a good life for those of us on
I
the
figure
stage.
I'm up in
Don't you
Canada.
know
I
you
might
did
as well
that-
see what's going on up here. It's like going on a fantasy vacation trip to the Upper East or the Upper West Side. It's like,
Right.
wow, look at these people up here. It's crazy.
So, as many of us know, you were on a televised road trip together in Spain.
Yeah, I forgot.
You forgot that. There's a question here about what your favorite region and favorite dish was in Spain. I have from the internet another question asking for a reprise of that, hoping that you would come to the American Midwest. So I'll put that to you. You don't have to respond to that. But our reader here asks, what was your favorite region of Spain and what was your favorite dish?
I went to high school in Spain, so I love the whole country. And this was back before Spain had its gastronomic revolution. It was back when Spanish food was overcooked meat and burnt garlic and oil. But for me, one of my favorite regions is all in and around kind of Valencia and their rice culture. And we made this paella. This guy made it. We didn't even touch it. And it was so damn good. And it says that kind of a dish for me. Again, it takes a little time and it was worth it, but I loved it. But we ate really well on that trip.
Mark,
Well,
do you
of course
remember the
don't
trip?
remember
You don't
any of
remember the trip.
Beyond the 3-day window,
Mark's
it's
like-
just vacuumed out.
We were in Spain.
There was this girl, this movie star, and
Yeah.
this Spanish girl
I
named
just
Claudia.
remember Mario singing Manic Depression while I was sitting in the back of a car.
It was aimed at him.
I really liked, I liked the North much more than I thought I did. And I really did like eating ham at 10:30 every morning, I have to say. And I also will say that someone told me yesterday that you told them we were going to Italy to do this show. But we're
Rumors,
not.
A boy can
abounding.
dream.
Not with Charlie, anyway.
Right, figure it out. I
Others
like
are
the Midwest
dreaming.
idea, though.
The
That's
Midwest
interesting.
idea
That's
could be
a very
good.
cool show.
I'd go on that trip. What is your least favorite ingredient? Asks a viewer of ours.
Durian.
Durian.
Durian's good. You know, I
Should we explain durian? Yeah, durian.
Imagine there's a
No,
diaper.
easy, easy.
I'm going to go easy. Imagine there's a full diaper of a baby with gastrointestinal problems, and you let it sit in the bathroom of a Texaco station all summer long. That's durian.
Yeah.
With sugar on it.
Yeah. It doesn't, not that I know,
It's an
but I can
acquired
imagine it
taste,
doesn't
you know.
taste like that diaper. But
Well, I've never eaten the diaper
Yeah,
because it scared me off. I don't know how.
how about you?
You know, I don't have one. Of course, I hedge on everything. But I used to hate celery, which I think is kind of interesting, and now I totally adore it. So I think almost everything is something of an acquired taste. I kind of like durian, actually.
What a surprise.
There we go. Here's someone who asks, how can we use these concepts of eating well with real ingredients to combat malnutrition caused by urban poverty? That would be, I would assume, the lack of real ingredients in our food deserts.
Can you, maybe you could you ask that
What's the
question
answer
again?
to America's problem?
Right.
Yeah, that's the question.
We had a discussion like this with a
Campaign
bunch of
finance
chefs.
reform.
Yeah,
That's my
exactly,
answer.
exactly. I think two things come to my mind. First of all, that we waste more than we could feed the whole world right now, every day, with the amount of food that we make and we throw it away. So we need to find some way to incentivize not wasting and to allow the free market to drive that. And there must be a way that we can figure out a way of either repurposing it or reharvesting it and bringing it to places where someone will make profit from helping them. That's the only way our problems are ever going to be solved. We have to entice people with profit or success to make these things happen. And in the other case, we need to figure out a way to use our soil and all of our resources in a way that won't exhaust it in the next 50 years while we strip it of all the nutrients by planting corn and soybeans in just about every place that we go. So we need to incentivize some kind of a fast food operation to be able to create something for $2 or $3 that people can have that's good for the soil as well as it's good for the kids. And it's probably going to be in the vegetable world. But we need to hide it in some way behind a bun or something.
Yeah. Make it crisp.
Right.
Mark?
I think in fact, what we need to do is to start making the marketing of junk food much more difficult, if not illegal, at least when it comes to children. And I think that's a starting place that needs to happen soon, and we'll see that happening in other countries before we see it happening here. But the corn and soybean thing is at the bottom of a lot of our problems. And corn is used for ethanol, corn is used for animal feed, and corn is used to make junk food. We're not talking about corn on the cob here. We're talking about processed corn. And soybeans are used to make oil, and soybeans go into animal feed, and soybeans are used to make junk food. We're not talking about edamame here, which is probably 1/10 of 1% of the production of soybeans. When that changes, everything else can change as well. But as Mario said, you ask questions like that, and they're legitimate questions, but you're asking questions that really do wind up ending up with, we need campaign finance reform. I mean, it's just such a big issue that you can't imagine where to start unraveling the...
Here's where that question meets the road for a lot of us in the audience today. You have a choice. Here at the supermarket, you have an organic item that's available to you. But down the street, there's a farmer's market where there's some non-organic stuff going. If you really want to make a difference, which do you buy?
You'd need a little more detail about each, but if you want to generalize, I would buy from the farmer.
Me too.
Done. So buy from the farmer. Okay, I don't even know if this is a question, but it's so great that it's going to be the thing we go out on. What do you think about? It's like the title of a show. What do you think about? And then there's a recipe. Fast potatoes. You take one of those freeze-lock bags, you put new potatoes in there, you microwave them, you cut them in 4-inch cubes. 4-inch cubes off new potatoes?
Maybe it means 1/4 inch.
Maybe. Put in the baggie with butter, salt, pepper, and then you microwave it, and then you mash it with your oven mitts. You cut the end of the baggie, and you squeeze it onto the plate.
Disgusting.
I'm all for it.
No, you're not.
What's wrong with it? You make a mess. It's
You're
mashed
gonna
potatoes.
cook in a Ziploc? I don't cook in Ziploc bags. Sorry, I don't do that.
I'll tell you though, a lot of the restaurants you eat at do.
That's why you have to cook at home. It's
Right.
exactly why you have to cook at home. I was at a talk the other night, and this guy, who was obviously clinically insane, said the only way to cook vegetables is to vacuum seal them in plastic and poach them for half an hour over low temperatures, at low temperature. Like, you must be crazy.
I like the oven at the 450.
Yeah,
I'm for
I'm with you.
All right, so we're going to have to clear out of here because Guy Fieri's coming in to talk to the empty auditorium about which of those imaginary dishes earlier is the winner. But I'd like to thank everybody here at the 92nd Street Y for coming out to see Mark Bittman and Mario Batali.
And Sam Sifton.
Thank you.
That's it.
John, we're done, man.
Thank you, everybody.